Hello, welcome to my 2022-2023 robot explanation for Worlds. So this is the robot I'm taking to Worlds. I've already taken it out, technically. And essentially, we're going to be working our way from the inside out, because a lot of you were asking me about my ratchet sharing mechanisms, as well as a lot of the complicated things, and how I got a 3-motor mechanism. So I'm just going to go through all that, and after that I'm going to cover the yellow, blue, and purple dispensers. Also, I packed away my field, so I can't give you a shooting demo, but those of you who saw me at Worlds or saw my reveal know what it's like. So, the first thing I want to cover is our ratchet motor share central mechanism, because we have 2 ratchet motor share mechanisms. So you can see here, we have a 3-motor stack. That fourth motor down there, whoops, just a second. That 4th motor down there is a drivetrain motor, so you can pretty much ignore that. But essentially we have this triple motor stack, which powers our shooter. You can hear it's pretty fast. So by having 3 motors, it allows us to have almost 100 RPM on the spinning shooters, as you can see there. And 6 to 8 per second. Some Magic Kid teams, and I believe Helen LLL, oh sorry, not Helen, Pure and Chan, use a speed ratio on their puncher, but I've wanted as much redundancy as possible. That's why I use 3 motors. So I just kept it at a 1-to-1 gear ratio with a chain. So the way we motor share, right? You can see when I spin, so the 2 motor sharing mechanisms in the center are this and this. I'm sorry about the wiring. I'll explain those later. But these 2 squares are essentially what allow us to motor share. They're made out of 4x4s, various pieces inside, and rubber bands. So when I spin it in one direction, you can see this square that's attached to this central shaft and the chain is not moving. But out here, the central power shaft, this one, is powering the purple dispenser mechanism, and it's powering the conveyor belt. You can see over here, like that, through this central chain, which you can see is moving, right? But when I change directions of the ratchets, you can see this stops spinning, but now the squares are spinning in a different direction. You can see here. So when the squares spin in separate directions, that's essentially how the motor sharing mechanism works. And I'll go into more detail on that later. Here is a quick little model that I made of the ratchet itself. You can see how it's got a rubber band and a clippy piece here. So some of you might have seen Austin's video a while ago on ratchets, and while his was okay, it was very bulky and it could only go about that far. Mine is different because it uses Gen 2 parts in a different piece setup, which allows it to spin infinitely in one direction and the other direction because it's getting bit by this here. So essentially by combining 2 of these together, like that, you can have an infinite amount of functions depending on how many directions you can spin, which is 2 in Vex IQ, but you can use PTO and VRC for mechanisms like that. The mechanism I want to go over is our Chomper mechanism, which is essentially what is able to actuate both the blue and the yellow so they can get out of the way of each other, like this. So essentially what it is we have this arm here. It's kind of like a car piston, right? This entire side of the robot has to be flush, right? So we couldn't have a shaft collar here. So we use this. It's normally held in by a rubber band, but it fell off on the plane to hold the whole shaft mechanism in. And this is attached to the shaft, which holds onto the yellow dispenser mechanism, right? The reason why we need to fold up the yellow when the blue goes down is because obviously the yellow would go in the way if they were both like that. But the reason why we need to fold down the blue when the yellow goes up is because we need to, this goes in the blue, so the yellow doesn't go in the way. But over here, the yellow can go in, and when the discs go up, they don't hit the blue. Because if this was just static, then they would hit the blue, and it would just be kind of bad. So we use this car piston mechanism here, which pushes on this arm, which is attached to the whole blue, like this. One other feature about the Chomper is because we have those 3 motors over here, and the 2 motors in the drivetrain, that means that's 5 motors already. So we only have 1 motor left. So that 1 motor pretty much has to take care of the yellow dispenser, the blue dispenser, and contact zone because we've already gotten everything else done. So what we have in here is another ratchet mechanism. So you can see when it goes down, it spins this chain, and that chain pulls on the rest of it. Here's another angle. So this chain in here is what powers the Chomper and pulls it up and down. And in here is a 1 to 9 gear ratio. We'll get back to that later. But this is a 2 to 5 attached to a ratchet. Essentially, the thing that makes this work is because this is all the way up, right? It normally can't spin all the way up. If you just were to twist the shaft and continue going up, it would not work, right? But because this ratchet here can actually spin further in one direction and in the other direction, it's got like that tightness, right? Like you can't keep pushing, but it can in the other direction. It allows you to continually spin in the other direction. So we did have to rubber band spring this so it'd pop back up on its own, but that was fine, it could handle it. So when it goes down, you can see here, this spins fine. When it goes up, it's like that. And it's attached to this 1 to 9 gear ratio right here to really slow it down, to make sure that it's not attached to make sure that it's not attached to it. And that's powered by this motor just above the conveyor sorter in here. Now that 1 to 9 is connected to the central Chomper shaft like this. You can see that little arm is constantly moving with the rest of the Chomper. And this arm is attached to a pitch string, which is different than the one in our reveal. And this pitch string pulls down over this angle, and this angle pulls down on this pitch string here, which pulls down on this mechanism in a linear slide. That's a lot of pull downs, I know, but bear with me. And this linear slide is, it seems like it's just barely holding onto this contact zone, but the way it's built, it doesn't pop up, right? Like it's pretty sturdy. So we really, we were just fine with the way it was secured. So when this string gets tightened enough, this pulls down and releases. So what we can do is have this Chomper perform optimally throughout the entire match, right? Up and down, up and down. But because of the ratchet, this can keep spinning after it's deployed and release the contact zone. Now our contact zone is really unique because it has these two linear slides and a horizontal mechanism. You can see there, these two linear slides come together like why we elected to use this horizontal scissor lift mechanism instead of the classic vertical was for two reasons. So the first one is because we did not have space on this side, right? Like it looks like we kind of have a lot of space, especially if we took off the linear slide mechanism, but we just really couldn't get it to fit, especially having a mechanism connected to this central shaft here, which would power it. So that was the first reason to have it horizontal. But the second reason is actually really cool because a lot of contact zones are really bendy, right? And we found up and down, right? Because they could bend sideways, but up and down they were pretty sturdy, especially when fully deployed. So we figured why not turn it on its side? So sideways it's really sturdy, and then up and down it's bendy. So essentially it can reach into the contact zone much easier and be adjusted much more simply. So you can see here with the contact zone and the Chomper, the string isn't fully tightened, but now as it tightens the string, it releases the contact zone like this. As I was saying, right, this is really sturdy, right? This is pretty much jiggling the entire robot here. And see when I turn, the entire contact zone moves with it. So that essentially means that if we land outside of the zone, it takes incredibly low effort to actually move back into the contact zone. And most people think that would be it, but in order to also do that, we need to have this wheel on the end of it. So this wheel is one of the new hybrid gears that came in the Gen 2 kit. It's the 36 tooth one, and essentially, because it's rounded as well as rotatable, and because it's got such a high circumference, it's actually able to roll over a lot of decent sized bumps when we turn. So you can see here, from all the way over there, we have such precise motor control on the actual scissor lift. Blue dispenser mechanism is a passive blue, and you might think just because of the shape, because it's an L, it's the same as all the others, but it's actually really unique because you can see how high this is and how rounded this is. This is actually designed to hit this top white part of the blue, and then hit the back white part as well, using this gear, right, with two rollers. And instead of hitting the central shaft like this and then tilting up, ours kind of grabs the top of the blue and doesn't force it up, right? It curves it up rather than just in and then in like a two-step motion, which most robots use, which is in and then flip up because of how much strength it needs. So by having something like this, and it's held down by a pitch string, so it can tilt up and down like that, having a mechanism like that allows us to not require much force or distance at all when doing the blue. And these wheels just help us align. We found using just two big wheels was the best. We have no idea why some other teams were using like 10 or like 4 wheels It's just not necessary. And also, the tips of the alignment wheels have to be equal or further out than the tip of the blue, or else the alignment wheels don't actually do anything. So you can see here, like that, and another angle. When it goes in, it doesn't actually hit the central shaft. It hits the top of the white part and then flips it up. And now you can see them in the sorter. As they sort, they just kind of go into two separate lanes by themselves. We have some other sorting mechanisms as well, using these 5 treads on the sorter. Now when they shoot, they just come out in a pretty standard fashion. And because the discs from the purple all as well go in before actually entering the magazine, so they go into the sorter first, it allows the disc spread to be pretty much equal. And you can see us shoot them now. So the shooting's been pretty messed up after we got back from the plane, but it worked really well at Worlds. We're super happy about how we did. So we're fine with it. But essentially, that was the shooting, loading, and the blue dispenser mechanism. Of you might have already noticed, our conveyor belt is actually connected to our purple dispenser mechanism, so they can only spin at the same time. And our purple dispenser reel is really unique, where we call it a weave wheel. So it looks really janky and unhelpful, but what it does is it uses 2 broken rubber bands, and they're weaved in circles around the donut of the rubber tire and then put onto the pulley piece, right? That allows us to have this really unique formation, which has a lot of grip, because it acts like a bubble tire without as much, when it's spinning fast enough, without as much strength required to give it play, so that it has much better grip on the purple dispenser discs. Now these here, this and that, are both what we use to align for the purple dispenser mechanism. So you can see this wheel is aligned with this wedge here. You can see this trapezoid piece, which aligns into this cavity inside the purple dispenser, as you can see here, like that. And that helps us align. We can just kind of ram it and it'll go in easy. And then this is hits the side of this to make sure that it doesn't turn too much, because if it turns too much, it can hit the purple wheel and then a whole bunch of stuff happens. So here's it from another angle, like that, and here's it in action. Whoops. So when the discs exit the purple dispenser, they come in through here and just like chill in the conveyor belt while it's spinning at the same time, right? Now they go through this, it's almost horizontal, but not quite. It's got about 5 or 10 degrees of tilt upward, and go through this whole plastic sheet arrangement, hi Elon, but, and into our Octomags. Now the special thing about our Octomags is they're made from these 45-degree angle beams, lots and lots of them. I think it cost us like $40 to actually get our hands on them, because they're pretty rare. And just lots and lots of them circled around. And this was actually inspired by an elementary school team called the BitBot Builders, they had a really cool magazine in sorter design. I don't know if they have a YouTube channel, but it allows the discs to have like this almost perfectly circular shape, rather than the old semicircle that the plastic sheets could do. So it allowed much better sorting. And in here, you can see inside the magazine here, there are those pins on top of the puncher. I don't know if you can see them. And that allows the discs to tilt before they go in. So we can have a perfect height inside of the magazine for the discs to exit without them actually sliding out, because of that pin. Because that makes the angle, you can see over here, normally they'd be at about an angle like this, but now they're at an angle like this, right? Which is taller than it can be to fit out of the magazine. So when it punches, it lowers back all the way, and it pulls back all the way, and it allows the discs to fall all the way through and go through. There are a bunch of shooting demonstrations of mine. I'll probably cut one in now. Yellow dispenser mechanism is a back entry yellow. And we think this is really cool because I don't think I've seen a single puncher, or I did see a couple that looked a little like mine, a little suspicious, but back entry yellows for a puncher robot. A lot of flywheels did it. And what we thought was pretty cool was we were actually the first to do back entry. Flying Cheese actually mentioned that we were as well. So we thought it was a pretty cool homage to the first Patriot robot that we built, which was also one of the first conveyor punchers in the world, to also do back entry, but also just because it's more efficient, gets it straight into the thing. So essentially what it is this is the chomper goes down. You can see this releases as the blue goes up, and we can just do as many tries as we want, right? So if this doesn't go all the way down as it's supposed to, we can just try again, and it usually makes it. So you can see in here, it kind of lifts up before it even does any flipping. It's already propping up the discs because these wheels actually guide on top of the yellow, right? Because most of them flex downward as they go in. So you can see there, it was just got them all in. And normally we would fold up the chomper after we were done, which puts the discs into this kind of formation here, which allows them to sort. And this was the main bottleneck of most of our matches when we sorted the yellow discs, because our puncher is actually separate from our conveyor belt, but they can't both spin at once. We really, and our capacity isn't good enough because there's only 24 capacity between the two magazines. We actually had to store them in this while we shot and then sort them again. So we could have gotten like 25-second stop times, but we had to just sit there for 7 seconds to get those yellow discs sorted, which would have been all right, but we were still getting 3 or 4 second stop times for field clears, so we were fine with it. And that's just the chomper again in action and the flipper mechanism. So just one more quick thing. This is our drivetrain, where it's a chain drive because we didn't have room for a gear drive. See here, this beam has to go across and support this support beam here, which makes this whole robot really sturdy. And if we didn't have that beam, the magazines wouldn't be possible. So we just kind of bit the bullet and had a chain drive, which we probably shouldn't have. It didn't treat us too well at Worlds, but it never actually failed. It was just a little laggy in some places, so we were fine with it. And one interesting thing about our chain drive is we had asymmetrical chain tensioning, which is essentially when you have two sides of a drivetrain, normally they're supposed to be identical, but over on this side, you can actually see well, you can't, but these pins here are all the things that tension the chain, and a perfectly tensioned chain means that the drivetrain is going to go better. But for some reason, ours would not drive straight when we had perfect chain tensioning, and it wasn't the motors, it wasn't the wheels, it wasn't the shafts. We couldn't figure out what it was. So we used asymmetric chain tensioning. See, there's nothing here but these two, and then there's, I believe, a standoff in one of these holes. Yeah, this one here. Help tension the chain just to make sure that it's functional, and that's our drivetrain with the 2-to-1 gear ratio. So 3-motor puncher, 3-motor conveyor in purple, 2-motor drivetrain, 1-motor chomper mechanism, and that's pretty much it. Make sure to watch my reveal and my group reveal with Austin for more, and make sure to watch Austin's robot explanation, because his robot was much better than mine, although Puncher Gang W, flywheel, not W. But yeah, make sure to watch his robot explanation. It's really cool too. Bye.
What did I do wrong? I only